Hey there, G3XE here, and today we're going to be continuing the series for Malam's Maze and talk about the meat of the adventure, Malam's Castle itself. So, weirdly, this is going to be, though it's a very important part of the quest, it's the one I'm going to leave most up to you. I'll give you the rooms that I came up with, and then you feel free to move them about as you wish, since this is supposed to be a maze, and since it's supposed to be a crazy, labyrinthine, elaborate maze devised by a insane wizard, it's something that I don't think I would be able to sit down and actually make it so that I have a map out of, okay, you take a left here, you go this, you do this, and then this room, and then this room. So I pretty much had random rooms. I drew up about 20 rooms. Some of them are pretty much filler rooms, to be honest, but I'll give the key rooms, and then when people make a left or a right or whatever, I kind of build it as I go along. That's the secret behind Malam's Maze. That being said, certain ones are in certain places within the castle. Like, they're not random. And that's how I've built Malam's Maze. So I'll go ahead and talk about the ones that are fixed, and then the ones that are random. So the ones that are fixed, let me get notes here real quick. Is it, I think it's, so, the ones that are fixed, one of them is the puzzle door that, guards the dungeon, to the secret passage that goes under through Crumble Mall Mine into, Malam's Castle. Malam, since he built this as an escape route specifically for him, built this puzzle door so that no one else but him could use it. The puzzle door has to do has multiple things. Number one, it is in the middle of a maze. So this is the one room where there actually is a maze, and just look up a small maze on Google Images or draw one yourself. And essentially, what I did was prep the adventurers beforehand, say, okay, this is going to be a legit maze portion. Here, here's a piece of paper and pen specifically, like I'm telling you, metagame. You might want to keep track of the directions that you turn. And I was afraid they would get into too many dead ends, but I think overcompensated in that I made it a very small maze, because you can't have a super complex maze, because then you're going to spend 2 hours of the game with people going, we take a left, we take a right. Is there, dead end? Okay, we turn around, which is boring. So a very small maze. Then they are hunted in the maze by typical denizens of mazes, minotaurs. Now this is no ordinary minotaur, for it is a minotaur created, or it is Malam himself. This is the fate of Malam. If you look at the monster manual and, other just sources, people go mad wandering in mazes for so long that they become minotaurs, according to the minotaur lore. And so this minotaur is Malam the Minotaur, and has the tattered remnants of the typical blue and white wizard robe on him. And so he's hunting them, the party, as they go through this. What was funny is that one of my players, I don't know why, they were talking about ways that they could backtrack in case they needed to, like drop beans, like in Hansel and Gretel or whatever. And for whatever reason, he was like, well, I have some raw meat, because he had taken meat off this deer that he killed. He was a ranger. And he's like, well, just leave this. And everyone else was like, that's weird. Why, can't we just use anything else? He was like, well, I have a lot of it. And so I was like, okay, I guess you do that. And I pretty much, instead of, because what I was doing was rolling random to see if the Minotaur found them, and that he just found them the next round. And he was like, oh shit, he followed the trail of meat, didn't he? And I'm like, yeah. Minotaurs have a super keen sense of smell and know to a T the maze in which they live or inhabit. And so he kind of drew him right to him, but was able to fight him right away, I guess, so it got rid of the threat of danger, although they didn't really know how much danger they were if there's more, because I ended up throwing an extra little ooze because they killed Malam too soon, essentially, or sooner than I had expected. The puzzle door itself, I built a little. It's like a segment of a pen, that an old like dried out pen, and then I put little rings of paper on it, so it was kind of like a serial decoder, one of those things for these specific runes. And then there's a clue alluding to the fact that Malam's name is spelled the same backwards as it is forward. And it's a door requiring a password, and it's written out like, speak the password, and they make the joke, oh, we say friend and blah blah, all the typical stuff. But the password's not Malam. It can be any palindrome of your choice, and then you give the hint based on that palindrome. So, for example, a simple one that doesn't really fit is race car. Race car is spelled the same backwards as forward, and would be a good one to give hints about. Except that it's a fantasy setting, obviously. But there's a bunch you can look up, and there are even sentence ones, which if you really want to try and stump them, although that seems a little sadistic. And, but, there's like noon is what I did. You just look up a list of palindromes. There are a lot of them. So that is the puzzle door. That one's fixed at the bottom of the dungeon. The other one that's fixed is the ballroom, which is immediately once you enter the castle via the front gate. So if they go that route, fight the gargoyles, they'll be sweating from this crazy battle, bleeding, finally get the portcullis open, because it takes a few actions per... it takes like 5 successful actions to of 2 people to lift the portcullis, and meanwhile the gargoyles are fighting him. And then there are alligators in the thing below. Now this is I just had them out for fun, but so they'll be bleeding if they go this route, and sweaty and terrified, and then immediately as they enter, they are greeted by a butler in fancy clothing and a ball that is in progress of people in the Sunday finest in ball gowns and suits with flowers and the little thing and corsages, I guess, and people spinning around and dancing and hors d'oeuvres and candles and just great ambiance. And so to write out a good description of this beforehand is a great way to it's just such a swift change in tone that it'll get a reaction of some kind. It will, granted, make people suspicious. My players actually didn't go this route, so I wasn't able to use it, but so I don't know what they would have done, but they probably would have been suspicious. Now, it's supposed to add to the kind of horror and backstory of Malam's Maze itself, because he used to have these parties, and they probably would have known that if they investigated back in Fellhaven. So, they talk with, they'll probably warily talk with the people and do their magic checks and do everything. If they have however lenient you want to be, if they have anything that detects presence of ghosts, that goes off, right? So I don't know if that's a paladin's sense of detect evil or whatever, but they've essentially gone into the party scene from The Shining, if you've ever seen that movie, except that very similar, except fantasy themed, and it's the old vision of Malam's old parties, and the exception that for every minute that they spend in there talking with people, their characters age 1 year, because ghosts have this ability to age people. Now, these aren't going to be ghosts straight from the Monster Manual, because that's way too hard of a fight, because this is supposed to be a ballroom full of people, right? When they finally either realize that these people are ghosts, or get close to the end of the room, and there are 2 exits, one that goes to the kitchen, one that goes out into the hallway. And I guess you could also have a staircase if you wanted, because again, we're rolling random, so it doesn't really matter where they go. But they don't know that. As soon as they get close to an exit, or determine that these are ghosts, everyone it's like a flash, an instant. Everyone who was just dancing is suddenly turned and looking at them, all in unison. Their jaws fall down, or, open, and a horrible screech just is emitted by all of them, right? A ghostly screech. And then they all vanish and then if they look around, or or you could just tell them straight up, all of those people are hanging from the ceiling, on nooses, rotting corpses, but the same people. So it's like they were in a fancy suit, but it's all rotted. And if it was the butler, and he's, slightly recognizable as the butler, but has got, he's skeletal remains, and he's swaying in a noose. So it's a scary, horror movie cliche type of thing, I guess. But I think it would be cool. And if they have fun with it and be like, oh, this is a ball, of course, or even if they're suspicious but they spend a lot of time there, their characters can get, like, pretty old, especially if they're not an elf. They're a human, and they spend 20 minutes, like, their character's suddenly 20 years older, and you can do whatever numerical benefits or penalties you want to that, but I think that's a fun way to have a permanent effect on a character, and let them know that, like, this maze ain't messing around. Like, your character can die, can get everything about them changed, I mean, I wouldn't pull this trick more than once, because it's kind of a one-trick pony, but there you go. So that is the ballroom. The third set place is the study, and this is if they go up the climbable way. Now, if they go up the climbable way and they come to the top, the very top floor, Malam has his study, which is study is an understatement. It's a massive library with leather chairs and stuffed cougars and brandy, a fireplace. This is what I'm imagining for his study, with a window that overlooks the lake. And if they go in here, it is oddly well kept. Now, they'll probably think, whatever monster this might be, they'll theorize, but in fact, this is a custom monster I thought up. And I did make stats for it, but your stats will vary. Essentially, I took an elemental. I think it took an air elemental. Because or maybe it was an invisible stalker, but then I made it a little bit weaker. What this monster is, I called a tome spirit. And a tome spirit is an evil, or at least a haunting entity that gets trapped in a library or places with lots of books. And so they kind of manifest themselves by taking control of lots of books at the same time, and can kind of form themselves into a physical thing. So it's essentially a book elemental. This thing throws textbooks, can control textbooks with its fingers. Well, textbooks, I say. I'm too much in the class mode, because I'm currently taking summer classes. So, no, tomes, big books, right? And that's what this thing is made of, is a pile of roiling and falling down and then reascending giant tomes, old texts, papers and pages flying all around. And this thing is 10 feet tall, and its fist is the size of, like, 5 dictionaries all bundled together. And so, I mean, it is a good monster, I think, because they won't see it coming, because it's made up. And it's weird and freaky, and you don't know how to hurt it. And then, also, it gives them a good idea, I feel like, of that it's dangerous, but it's not, like, super life-threatening. It's a good, like, safety kind of enemy to give them, that even if you give it good stats, it might not do too much damage, because I nerfed the amount of damage it did, because they're essentially just getting with books, so it's a lot of bruises, but nothing like getting, like, stabbed with a sword or whatever, right? And the weakness I gave it was fire, so the way to kill it, because if it could heal by gathering more books from the library shelves. And again, this is another one that I don't get to use because they didn't go that way. They went under the tunnel for me. So, boo-hoo. But you could just put it wherever you want. I decided, just time-wise, I was like, it's fine. It's hard to get from a dungeon to a study, but I guess you could do it. And it heals by gathering more books. So whatever way they want to try and go about it, I would let their solution work, as long as it makes sense. So if they are going to burn the book so that it can't heal back, that works too. but if they burn it, it no longer has any physical form and it'll wither away. But physical attacks and stuff are, again, temporary. Magical attacks, poisoning, other stuff, pretty temporary. Well, obviously, he's immune to poison and other conditions like that. But so that's the Tome Spirit. And honestly, I'll probably use this monster in a different adventure since I didn't get to use him this time. So those are the 3 set ones. Now, what are some of the random ones? Well, a few, like I said, were filler. They were hallways with one left turn and a trap, with a dart trap, something like that, or a pit trap, or orcs playing a card game and you interrupt them, or, lots of stuff like that. A few of them, though, that were required, they have to get through these X number before they get to Pyroth's lair. Like I mentioned earlier in the one about orcs, the chapel where Newgut and his kind of rebel orcs are plotting. There's another one where it's a meat locker and has been taken over by Pyroth, and so there's lots of dead adventurers, and if you have them let's say they have a party, their rival party, right, that we talked about in the first episode, 1 or 2 of them, they could find them dead here. There's another one that I had them where it's a T intersection, and they come here, and their rival adventuring party comes here at the same time. And then there is, like, tons of gold and, like, loot all along here because it's this big, like, fancy dining room area. And I was thinking that'd be a fun brawl or whatever. And, there's a few things like that. So really anything you can imagine can fit in Malam's, sort of maze. Trying to think of others. Put in one of the, what's it called? Like a infirmary or whatever, like a hospital first aid kit for healing and like a resting point. One where there's a bed with an orc sleeping in it and they can like walk past him or whatever. Just small little encounters that you can do in rapid succession, essentially as they make their way to Pyroth's lair itself, which is at the bottom of what I call the hollow. So he's taken the inside of this castle and hollowed it out and scooped it out so that the top is open, and so that he can fly out and fly in as much as he wants. And at that bottom of his hollow, well, on the little right before the bottom of this hollow is where he's made his lair, and he's got a hoard of gold. And because he's a red dragon, even though he's younger, a dragon, lava has started to form and gather, and so there's lava at the bottom, and there's little rivers of lava, and obviously that's the climax, and that is where we will leave it for today. The next episode will be the battle with Pyroth himself and story resolution. Then I also think I am going to do a overview of what all the decisions that my players made, because at the time of filming this, I'm 1 session away from being done. They're outside of Pyroth's lair. And then I'll probably do a post-mortem about things I would have done differently and lessons I learned, so that can help you if you're running Malam's Maze. So thanks, see you in the next one.